Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? Where today I'll be breaking down the latest episode of Star Trek Picard titled Fly Me to the Moon, and looking for Easter eggs and references that you may have missed. This episode was probably one of the scarier ones of the series, with a plot involving a body-snatching Borg queen who may have compromised one of the main cast members. Q's plan is finally starting to take shape, and it looks like he is trying to manipulate the events of the future on not one but two fronts, with both having strong connections to Star Trek's established lore. Speaking of which, this episode may have also hinted at a suspected retcon of the Eugenics Wars storyline that was first mentioned during the original series, and I'll go over that and more here. But first, a quick thank you for clicking on this video, and if you do enjoy the content, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe for future videos. I just hit 25,000 subscribers, which is a huge accomplishment, but those still only make up about 10% of my views. So if you are coming back each week, please think about subscribing, as it really does help my videos get out to more people. Fly Me to the Moon, the title of the episode, is a reference to the song written by Bart Howard, but made famous in the early 60s by Frank Sinatra. The song also has a strong connection to the NASA space program, as it was played during the Apollo 10 mission, which orbited the moon, and also on the Apollo 11 mission before the first landing on the moon. We now know that within the context of the series, the mission to Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, is central to the outcome of the season after being teased throughout. This plot centers around Renee Picard, who was seen briefly at the end of the last episode reading a Dixon Hill story while being observed by Q. She is the great-great-aunt of Jean-Luc Picard, and he mentions in this episode that she found an organism on Io, another moon of Jupiter, and brought it back to Earth. This could be the event that changes humanity for the better, and the one that Q is obviously trying to prevent. It seemed like in the prior episode that Q had planned to just use his powers and force Renee into quitting the mission, but now it seems that since his powers have diminished, he has chosen to instead enter her life. Renee's acts were obviously a big influence on not only humanity, but also on Picard and his family, as we learn on The Next Generation that Jean-Luc's brother Robert has a son named Rene. This episode begins with Picard being whisked away to an apartment after meeting the Watcher last episode. Picard mistakes his character for Laris, but she reveals that her name is Talon, and that she is a supervisor. Picard deduces that she is a member of the same organization that a character named Gary 7 belonged to that Captain Kirk had encountered. The character Gary 7 was introduced on the original series episode Assignment Earth, and was a human whose ancestors had been abducted hundreds of thousands of years earlier, and he had been raised on another planet to fulfill this duty. He also identified as Supervisor 194, so it is likely that he and Talon have similar backstories. Kirk and crew came into contact with Gary 7 after they were forced to go back in time to 1968 and stop a change to the timeline. This season of Picard has many obvious parallels with this mission, including the crew going back in time to a year that is close to the year that the season is being filmed. The original series episode Assignment Earth was meant to act as a pilot for a spin-off series of the same name. It is ironic that the idea is brought up once again on Picard, which itself is a spin-off series. Speaking of which, this was the first time I noticed that in the opening credits of Picard, the series Star Trek The Next Generation is listed as what this series is based on. I believe that Picard is the only series or movie in the Star Trek catalog that is not listed as simply being based on Star Trek by Gene Roddenberry. When Picard is explaining to Talon his knowledge of Gary 7, he states that he believes that their jobs as supervisors are to protect the tapestry of history. This phraseology is a reference to the Next Generation episode Tapestry, in which Q once again showed Picard an alternate timeline in which it was he that did not take any chances and was forced into a menial existence. I thought that it was pretty interesting to learn in this episode that Picard also had an ancestor that dealt with feelings of anxiety, and if she did not take a chance and go into space, then all of humanity's future would have been different. It is this ancestor that Talon is assigned to, and she is worried that Renee will not be able to complete the Europa mission. While watching a therapy session, Picard is able to discern that it is Q who is acting as her therapist while doing a very bad Sigmund Freud impersonation. Coincidentally, Data started seeing a holographic version of Sigmund Freud in the Next Generation episode Phantasms, an episode that was directed by Patrick Stewart. The director of this episode is also no stranger to the bridge of the Enterprise, albeit in front of or behind the camera, as this episode of Picard was directed by Jonathan Frakes, also known as Captain Will Riker. Staying on the topic of directors, in the next scene we meet the latest and earliest member of the Soon family, Adam, explaining his work in front of a board of directors. The character sitting in the middle of this group is played by Leah Thompson, who not only directed the last two episodes of Picard, but is also known for playing the character Lorraine Baines McFly in the Back to the Future trilogy. Having her play this part really reminded me of a scene from Back to the Future in which Marty's band, the Pinheads, are told they are too loud to play the school dance. In that scene, the person who says this to Marty is Huey Lewis, who wrote the infamous theme song to the movie. The character to her left is named Vasily Rashenko. This character may be related to the same Rashenko family that adopts Worf after his parents are killed in an assault by the Romulan Empire. They debuted in the Next Generation episode Family, which is also where we meet Robert and Renee Picard, Jean-Luc's only living family at the time. Speaking of family, not only do we meet Adam soon in this episode, but also his daughter Corey, who is played by Isa Briones. I was worried that after we last saw Soji in the first episode, that we would not see Miss Briones again, and the show managed to bring her back in a fascinating way. Her name, Corey, is also one of the names of Persephone, who is known as the goddess of spring, but also the goddess of the underworld. This could be a hint that it is her character that may be responsible for humanity turning towards the light or the darkness, and the Europa mission may be a red herring. Brett Spiner's character's name being Adam is an allusion to the biblical figure Adam, who is also known as the first man. This could mean that this character is the first one in the Soong lineage responsible for the contributions to science made by the characters that follow him. Mr. Spiner has now played 7 distinct characters on Star Trek, which may be why Gary 7 was referenced this season. However, Mr. Spiner is still behind beloved character actor Jeffrey Combs, who has played 47 different characters throughout Star Trek. You probably noticed throughout the Soong household are hexagons, similar to the shielding that Adam uses to protect Corey. This same pattern can be seen in the future in the shield covering the Earth. While arguing, Miss Thompson's character Diane Werner mentions the sentient convention and how Dr. Soong broke it with his unsanctioned experiments. She also mentions that he was working for a privatized military company. I believe that where this is going, what we may be seeing, is a retcon of an event known as the Eugenics Wars. The Eugenics Wars were mentioned in the original series episode Space Seed, and this was the time period that Khan and his followers were thought to be from. In that episode, Spock explains that in the 1990s, a world war occurred between genetically altered human beings and the major countries of the world. This led to Khan and his followers to be cryogenically frozen and sent into space, only to be found later by Captain Kirk and the Enterprise. Technically, these events should have already happened, but they do not seem to have occurred yet. But there is a loophole that may have even been mentioned by Picard in this episode. Virtually any time that a character from Star Trek has spoken about this time period, it is always with the caveat that records of this period are sparse and inconsistent. Picard series executive producer Terry Matalas has even alluded to this after being asked by a fan, and has said that EMP bursts during World War III destroyed records from this era. A bit later in the episode, Picard specifically states that records from the 100-year period leading up to First Contact are hard to find. So it is possible that Spock was not correct in stating that the Eugenics Wars occurred in the 1990s, and that in fact they have yet to occur. If this is the case, then Adam Soong may be one of the main causes of this event. This would make sense, as we learn in the series Enterprise that his descendant Eric Soong is still trying to develop genetically altered human beings. So the sentient convention may have been something put in place by the world's governments to prevent an event like the Eugenics Wars from occurring that Dr. Soong has no issue with disobeying if he thinks it will help cure his daughter. Later, Adam is back at his lab when his system gets hacked by Q. He leaves a literal calling card, and when you call the number listed on the card, you hear the following greeting.
Hello, you have reached the Q Continuum. We are unable to get to the phone right now because we are busy living in a plane of existence your feeble mortal minds cannot possibly comprehend. Furthermore, it's pointless to leave a message because we, of course, already knew that you would call, and we simply do not care. Have a nice day.
Back at Chateau Picard, the Borg Queen is able to contact the police, and they send one poor guy who eventually gets captured. I love how this is set up like an old school horror movie, and a common trope is to have characters engage in deviant behavior, like having sex or doing drugs, before getting killed or captured. Since showing a character smoking is no longer allowed on a series, except for reasons of historical or factual accuracy, this character was in effect engaging in said behavior by lighting up a cigarette before his capture. The Queen even references curing his nicotine addiction before she grabs him. Dr. Soong meets Q at a restaurant where Q gives him a cure for his daughter's disease. This is not the first time in Star Trek we have seen a father compelled to do something to save his daughter, as this is very similar to the beginning of the movie Star Trek Into Darkness, in which Khan, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, is able to manipulate a member of Section 31 to explode a device after saving his sick daughter's life. In that movie, it was established that Khan's blood could not just cure disease, but bring people back from the dead. This, along with the plot points I mentioned earlier about the Eugenics Wars, leads me to believe that this vial contains the same thing that makes Khan's blood so special. Now that Q has introduced this into the timeline, this could be the catalyst that begins the Eugenics Wars if Dr. Soong is able to not just cure disease, but create stronger genetically altered soldiers. He may also have a chip on his shoulder if being rejected by modern science turns out to be the reason for his daughter's death. At Chateau Picard, the Queen lures Agnes back to the ship and shows her that she has captured someone. The way she has the policeman in her tentacles reminded me of a scene with another sci-fi character that Brent Spiner has played, Dr. Oaken, in the Independence Day movies. Dr. Soon gives the cure given to him by Q to his daughter Corey, and she is seemingly cured for at least a moment. In keeping with my theory about the season being linked to the eugenics wars, I wouldn't be surprised if Corey herself was born from genetic engineering. Her mother is briefly mentioned, and it is obvious that Dr. Soon does not want to talk about her, so it's possible that Corey has no actual mother and that she is a genetic clone. If the science had yet to be perfected, and in this episode we have already seen evidence of Dr. Soon being a doctor who operates on the fringes of science, then her ailment may be a side effect of the genetic cloning process not being refined. This would also link Corey to Soji, as Soji is an android clone of her father Data. Back on the ship, it appears that Agnes has killed the Queen. When she beams aboard Raffi 7 and Rios, you can hear the classic transporter sound from the original series. I've always found the use of color on movies and series to be fascinating, and this season I think with Agnes, you can tell how she is doing by what color she is wearing. All season, she's been the only character that has been dressed in white, but when the crew get back to the ship and she has killed the Queen, we can see that she's still in white, but she now has red blood all over her. Then later when she arrives at the ball, she's in a full-on red dress, and we learn that she is at least sharing her consciousness with the Borg Queen. Red is often used to symbolize a dangerous character, much like white is used to show an innocent one, so this use of color tracks her evolution throughout the season perfectly. Dr. Soon agrees to do what Q asks, as long as he provides him with a cure for Corey. I love how in this scene when Dr. Soon is talking, you can see the lights in the room that are in the same shape as the shielding he develops, which shows that he is motivated by protecting his daughter. When Dr. Jurati arrives at the ball, you can hear the band playing the song Fly Me to the Moon. We can see in the form of a flashback that before the Queen died, she transferred her consciousness to the Doctor. At first I thought that the Queen full-on assimilated her, but we can see that instead the Queen is living inside of her, which is sort of like how Spock transferred his consciousness to Dr. McCoy before he died in the movie Wrath of Khan. Agnes sharing her consciousness with the Borg Queen gives more credence to the popular theory that the new Borg Queen seen at the beginning of the season was in fact Agnes Jurati, and that she is a form of evolved Borg from another timeline. However, the Queen also mentions that there would be no way for them to get home without her help, so it is possible that she only fulfills this purpose this season. Personally, I think that both could be true, and that Alison Pill is doing a great job showing a lot of layers to this character throughout the 2 seasons. But let me know in the comment section, do you think that Dr. Jurati will become the Borg Queen? Well, that was everything I saw this week, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please hit that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?